Hi, it's me, Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and join me at Patreon. Link in the description. It was early in the party when it happened. Emily had been to many parties, and most of them were a very nice time where she had had a lot of fun. But even though she had been to several where she'd met many nice guys and all, nothing really clicked. She'd danced with most everyone at least once, all of the guys, and even some of the girls who had asked her, but nothing ever came of it. Then it happened. George came over smiling, with his older sister Victoria in tow. "Hi, Em," he said, giving her a little hug. "I'd like you to meet my big sister Victoria." Emily was awestruck. Victoria was a beautiful raven-haired and dark-eyed beauty who looked like some fashion model's dream. When she spoke, her voice was as soft and as warm as her hand, and her English accent gave her a lilt that held Emily enthralled, even as the soft tones sent an electric thrill up through her very center. "Yeah, and you thought all of us must look like me, huh?" George said with great self-satisfaction. "Thank you, George," Victoria said. "But unfortunately, I'm way too busy to stay here and gloat, so..." And he was gone. "Are you feeling okay?" Victoria asked. "Oh, yes. I'm sorry, it's a little warm in here and I've been dancing a lot," Emily said, as Victoria took her arm and began to steer her toward the refreshments. "I have to say that I've been very keen to meet you. It was almost the first thing I was going to do when I finally got everything together for my parents and came to join them." Victoria's eyes flashed as she seemed to drink in Emily's face. "Here, let me get you something cool. I wouldn't want you to give out on me before I've even had a chance to have one dance with you. So, what will you have?" Victoria stood smiling at her. She was perfect, and it was all Emily could do to keep from shouting, "You," but somehow she managed to mumble, "Coke." "Please. You have such a sweet voice, Emily. No wonder you're all George can seem to talk about in his letters. He was right about you being very pretty too. I'm glad I finally got here to meet you." Emily knew that she too was talking, responding to Victoria's questions at least, but she couldn't even hear her own voice, nor remember what she said. She only knew that when she did, Victoria would smile or laugh, and that those were the two most wonderful things she had ever seen. Em had no idea of the stares that she and Victoria were attracting from her friends. Nor did she notice when someone gently pulled Amy away from William to point out the two girls in the corner. "Well, will you look at that?" Amy was stunned by her friend's choice, but clearly, judging by the blush on her friend's face and upper part, the choice had been made. Her eyes never wavered from Victoria's face in the full 2 minutes Amy watched her. "You go, girl," Betty chuckled beside of her. "So what's the pool up to now for the boy or girl and the one for the specific suitors?" she asked absently. "They combined them months ago," Amy said, sadly shaking her head. "I had Roger. I'd kill her if I weren't so damned happy for her." Amy smiled at Betty before turning back to William, who just said, "What is it?" "Never mind, the music is starting," Amy said to him. Across the room, Victoria led Emily over to where the other couples had begun to dance. For just a moment, Emily hesitated as she began to slide her hands toward Victoria's waist. Victoria was faster, though, and took them in her own, even as Emily hesitantly reached for her. "Do you mind?" she said to Emily as she lifted the girl's hands up so that Emily could place her arms around Victoria's neck. "God, no," Emily said with way too much enthusiasm, the admission making her blush and Victoria giggle. "Well, all right then," Victoria said, grinning from atop the cloud she was standing on. "I'll lead then, shall I?" And she continued to look into Emily's eyes while they danced, until the girl's head had sunk down to nestle against the nape of her neck. In the far corner, George was counting a considerable sum of money. "I tried to tell you all that you needed a ringer, but no. You don't listen, and you're all purr for it." No one noticed. Everyone else was watching Emily. It was 6 o'clock and Emily was just coming down the stairs. Her father's heart froze. He knew then that he had never seen a more beautiful young woman, nor would he ever again. His wife spoke first. "Sweetheart, you should wait upstairs to make an entrance." I can still do that from down here, Mom, and besides I'm ready and I want to be with you guys. She gracefully floated down the rest of the staircase and into the living room. She definitely tended toward the feminine. Joan thought her gown almost looking bridal. All across town tonight, mothers were trying to argue their daughters out of spiked hair and leather. Well, count your little blessings, she thought. Well, Daddy. She smiled nervously at her father. Did you get your money's worth? For a moment, all he could say was, my goodness. Then finally, many years ago, when I saw your mother at our wedding, I knew that I had found the most beautiful girl in the world. I know that she will understand that I've never doubted that for a single instant, until now. You look exquisite, baby. Oh, Daddy, Emily said as she flung her arms around her father. Joan reacted too. Don't start crying, for God's sake. It took us 2 hours to make her up. What on earth is wrong with you saying something like that at a time like this? Joan was completely flustered. Tom recoiled as if he had actually done something wrong and almost apologized before what she'd said dawned on him. Hey, wait just a minute, dear. Oh, hush, Tom. I think you've said enough. Okay, her father said, clearly putting on his most uppity manner for them, but only for the girl. That's right, mister. Joan said. So who is this beau you managed to ensnare, child? He asked innocently. Daddy, I told you that Roger was picking us up first, and then we would bring Vic to meet you. Emily said, in exasperation for the 100th time. Well, He began, but her mother interrupted. I think they are here. Go into the dining room, baby. A moment later, the doorbell rang. Her father quickly reached the door and opened it to see Roger standing there. Hello, Roger. I'm sure we can dispense with the usual speeches, now can't we? Tom said to the young man. I'm sure that you can, sir. You see, I have some very good news. Roger suddenly halted as Emily came drifting back into the living room, her white full-skirted gown shimmering as she seemed to float just above the floor. Hello, Roger, she said in her exquisite voice. Are you here to escort me to the prom? Then, she just stood there smiling at them until the silence had gone on quite enough for her rising level of discomfort. It seemed like everyone she knew had lost his or her minds completely. Roger, your mouth is open, dear, she said no less softly. The snap of Roger's teeth sounded like a pistol shot in the small living room. Emily, I'm sorry, I just didn't know what to say. You look. The poor boy did everything except for clapping his hands over his eyes just to keep them from falling out of his head. However, he quickly decided they were only eyes. Emily, you look wonderful. He finally managed to get out. Her father had finally been able to look away from Emily, only to recognize the look of pure adoration on the face of the young man standing beside him. Joan, you take Emily in the other room, while I have that little talk with this young man of our daughters. He said only half-jokingly. Tom, please. Joan hissed. Daddy, echoed Emily. Game set and match to the double X team, he thought. 2,834 to nothing, but someday. He'd win one someday. He grinned to himself as he sat in his chair and reached for the paper. Roger found his voice. Sorry, sir, but that won't be necessary. Like I tried to say before. She's going to be here. He rushed to get it all out. What? Emily said. She'll be here, Em. She caught another flight, and she's already on the ground and on the way here. She should be here any minute. Roger glowed to be able to bring her the news. Oh, Roger, please tell me you're not teasing me. She's really going to be here, Emily said with eyes that threatened her makeup again. Her mother and father said in unison as they both rose to move toward Roger in the vain hopes that simply being closer to him would make for better understanding. Her mother was the next to speak. Did you say, she, Roger? Yes, ma'am, I.D. Excuse me? There was no mistaking the voice that came from the door. I don't wish to intrude, but are you the parents of Miss Emily Gordon? Standing in the still open door was a second vision of loveliness. This one, a contrast with their own fair and virginal white-gowned daughter, was dressed similarly in a full flowing pattern, but hers was all in black. Who are you, dear? Joan found her voice. You must be Joan. I'm Victoria, Emily's date for the prom. Have I come at a bad time? Am I early? She said with her stunning inflections as she looked at her watch. No, you're right on time. Please, come in. Joan managed to get out. Oh, hello, Roger. Victoria smiled when she noticed him and then offered her hand. For a moment or two, I thought I'd got the directions wrong or something. And then she caught sight of Emily. Like everyone else that evening, she was temporarily at a loss for words, but her surprised expression quickly melted into a warm glow. There you are, Angel. I've missed you so. You look smashing. Brilliant, really. I've never dreamed anyone could look so lovely. You came, Vic. Is it really you? Emily said as she rushed to press herself into Victoria. Of course I did. I promised. Actually, it's quite a story, but all worth it to see how beautiful you are. You look like a princess. No, Emily, that's not quite it. You look like princesses want to look. Emily moved to meet her, and Victoria clutched the fairer girl tightly to her. For a while I thought I might not make it, but I got lucky. Emily finally began to loosen her grip on the older girl sufficiently to lean back far enough to see her eyes. So, Victoria asked, are you too timid to kiss me in front of your parental units then? Emily only smiled, and with slow deliberation, and without ever allowing her eyes to leave Victoria's own, turned her head from one side to the next. That's good, Victoria laughed, because I'm not afraid either, and proceeded to kiss Emily after a fashion that has inspired writers of poetry throughout human history. None of the others in the room were actually poets, unfortunately, so they were mostly shocked and uncomfortable, but that didn't detract from that kiss in the least. When they came up for air, Joan quickly took her daughter in tow to once more repair the damage to her makeup, while muttering softly under her breath. Her father managed to say, "Won't you have a seat?" "Thank you, no. I've been sitting for some time already. I'd prefer to stand for the moment, if you won't think it rude of me." The coolly self-assured girl explained. "Anyway, you wouldn't believe what I went through to get here. There I was sitting in the airport with my dad when my friend Lucky, Bob Luckner, from my old high school, shows up to see me off from his job right there in London. Well, we're sitting there in one of those little airport cafes at Heathrow when they start calling the passengers for our Virgin flight early. Well, I'm thinking that this might just be super, because we might be able to get off a little early, and I won't miss the ball after all. Of course, they immediately announced that the flight had been cancelled due to mechanical problems, and that we would have to wait, or find other flights. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.